Good evening, Facebook family. This is a Dee Bowden of BCS Solutions. I'm actually waiting for Anne Alston to join me for our interview so I can talk to you about the importance of managing your accounts receivable so your cash flow actually stays solvent. Hopefully, Anne can check in soon. We're doing a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see here. Let's see if we can get her in here. We're waiting for her to show up. Hopefully, she'll be able to click in soon. All right. So looks like she's in. Yes. Now, hey Ann, are you there? Ann, are you there? Can't hear you. Oh, I still had it here. Uh-oh. Okay. Hmm. Let's see here. What's going on? Again. We may have to switch this. I was trying to do it this way. I thought it might be easier. So y'all apologize.
Hello.
Hey, there she is. Good evening, Ann. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Here I am.
All right, all right. Can everybody see us? Wave, hey.
I'm going to go ahead and share this to the group so that we can
Yes.
basically get people to do it. So this is a great time to share,
Okay.
share. Absolutely. Absolutely. How?
Does this work out okay for you?
Yeah, this is fun.
Okay, cool. I just need to know
Right.
how we can, but I posted everywhere, so I just need to know how we can, I guess people are starting to chime in. Hey, Wes, good evening. Hello, Dayton Bass. How are you? Thanks for chiming in. Appreciate y'all.
Yep. So I just shared it with the group. So we should be having some people join momentarily in the group as well.
Okay,
So
okay. Good. Yeah, like I said, I was trying to get us as much exposure as possible. I learned from Dr. Larry. If you follow him, boyfriend has us posted everywhere. I mean, you look up, you're like, I didn't know everybody was coming. Hey, Stephanie Green's on there. Hello. Yes. All right,
right, that's right. Join in the party. And you
I'm
know what?
joining.
You're going to lots of playback as well. There's going to be a lot of people who's going to watch the playback and get some really good information.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna talk, but I'm gonna let you do the interviewing. I'll let you get started, let you do what you do best, and then I'm gonna hopefully give some great information about accounts receivable and most importantly how secure is your cash flow, because that's what we're talking about today. It's about your cash. That's what's up.
What? We talking about the money now. Okay. Well, first of
Girl,
all,
look, I got on my freedom shirt. Can y'all see my freedom shirt? Freedom is money is freedom. Freedom is
that's right.
money.
Absolutely. Hey,
Yeah.
Stephanie. Hey, joining the
Hi,
webinar.
Stephanie.
Thank you so much. So my name is Anne Alston, and I am the creator of the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast, the magazine, the group, all that kind of stuff. And I am so honored to talk to Dee Bowden today about her organization and what is she's going to bring to the table, which is all about money, all about how to make sure that you are collecting your just due, especially like with services. And it is the lifeblood of a business. You can't be in
Absolutely.
business unless you're actually collecting. And really am excited about having her on on not the I want to keep saying podcast. That's what I'm
It's
used to saying.
okay. It's
So
podcast, webinar, live Facebook Live. Look, we getting the information out. We're all good. It's all good. As long as they listen, as long as they looking and they liking and they sharing. That's all we need. Y'all make sure you like and share,
hey,
please.
Troy Johnson, how you doing? So first of all, let me just start off by just asking you to just introduce yourself, the
Sure.
name of your organization, and how did you get into this line of work?
Well, great. Well, Anne, first of all, thank you so much for the introduction and for the for the great warm welcome to join this. So, I'm Dee Bowden, CEO of BCS Solutions. I got into revenue collection and contract closeouts about 20 years ago. I actually got my start doing data entry, and then I did accounts payable, accounts receivable. I actually was a contract administrator in the private sector for many years. And then I have been in the government space as a contractor for about 19 years. So I've been looking at how money happens in business. Most companies are working to create, get their business, get their money started, get their revenue collected. And I feel like it's been really important to make sure that everybody who's in business, basically you go into business to get money, to make money, let me put it that way. And so my passion, my drive is that every company goes into business to make money. And then on top of that, my passion has been to speak to or help educate small and minority owned businesses to make sure they're understanding the importance of their cash flow. My personal story is this. About 10 plus years ago, so I worked for an IT firm called Amherst Technologies. They no longer exist. They gave me $8 million to collect. I collected $6 million of that in 60 days. And even as great as that is, the company still went out of business. And because of that, it became my life's mission to work with and understand the importance of accounts receivable. Most people understand if you're owed money, you bill for your product or service, you want to make sure you're doing that. But on top of that, you want to make sure you're getting paid. Just like, for everybody who's watching and listening, and whatever your product or service is, you expect that when you provide that product or that service, and in 30 or 60 days, you're getting paid. My expertise comes in more in the 60 to 90-day issues when it's got hung up, whether, if you're dealing, business to business or business to government. When you're having challenges, getting paid, it's untangling the disconnects. A lot of my experience comes more on the government side and the government contractor side, because that's been the side I've come on. But I've also learned that when you're in business, it doesn't matter whether it's business to business or business to government. If you're owed money, you're owed money. And the most important part is that everybody wants to make sure they get paid and get paid in a timely fashion. So my premise has been to talk about how secure is your cash flow from the standpoint of, if you're in business, you want to make sure you're managing your accounts receivable. Basically, I do it old school, an Excel spreadsheet. I suggest, do it old school. You do an Excel spreadsheet. You're tracking, 0 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 to 90 and above. You have a list of all your contracts and your invoice numbers and the amounts owed and who owes you them. And the other piece I'm talking about more and more is the importance of building good relationships with the people who owe you money. Now, most people have a really kind of feeling about collection. They think about like that horrible collector calls you up screaming about, you owe me money, and they're like, nah, it's not like that. I'm not talking about it from that standpoint. So let's be clear. I want to let people know that collections is as much a part of your business as anything else you do. It's important that you understand that the relationships are very important. Because I started from basically the ground up, I know what it's like to be a data entry person. I know what it's like to be an accounts payable person. I know what it's like to be an accounts receivable person. I know what it's like to have to go figure out the disconnects of why aren't you getting paid. I know what it's like to be screamed at. I know what it's like to have to figure out that. And then also to make sure that going forward, that the things that I encountered, that I don't put those on with someone else. It's more important to make sure you build those relationships. So over my 20, go ahead.
Stop there, because that was a lot of great information. So I want to kind of take it just a little bit to kind of break down for those folks who don't particularly understand the difference between accounts payable and accounts receivable, and why you really should have, even myself, I actually need an accountant to help me with my accounts receivable and accounts payables. And when you're talking about mathematician in terms of your money and what's going out and versus what's coming in and how that affects your budget throughout the year, let's take it back to just the definition between the two, because I'm pretty sure there's people going to watch this playback and they need to really understand the difference between accounts payables and accounts receivables.
Okay. I don't have the technical term for it, but I'll tell you this. Accounts payable basically, accounts payable and accounts receivable are basically your invoices. Accounts payable are your invoices that are billed out on behalf of your services. Accounts receivable is your invoices coming back in for your payment of goods and services. I'm sure there's probably a better way to do it, but I live, in the simple basic. Basically, accounts payable, so for example, if you're a company, ABC company, you bought 10 widgets. You bought those widgets from another store. You have to prepare your invoice with your contract number or your purchase order number, the amount of widgets bought, and the total amount. You're going to submit that invoice to the company in hopes that within 30 to 60 days, they're actually going to process it through their system and then actually cut you a check electronically or physically and then pay you for your services. Accounts receivable / collections is the art of basically collecting your receivables, the money that all the invoices that were submitted to your companies. Your goal is to actually get them paid. It's probably, like I said, a more professional way of doing it, but I'm just going to do it from the way I do it, which is, it's always been about collections for me. I know that there's technically, there's accounts receivable / collections. I've kind of been in the collections world, so it's been one and the same for me. Basically, if a company is owed money, that's accounts receivable, and basically there's an invoice that's been submitted based on your product or service, and ideally you're looking to make sure that you're getting paid within 30, 60. Trying not to get to 90 or over 120, but I know that there are people that get to over 60, over 90, over 120, and those those the disconnects for a variety of reasons. I hope that makes sense.
Okay.
And if you have more questions, I'll do that. And actually, before I go any further, I actually want to say to your audience, I have a free gift for everybody. I have something called 5 Successful Strategies to Collecting Your Money. It's actually on my website, www.bcsconsultinggroup.com, and you can put in your name and your email address, and you actually get it. It's a free PDF, which basically talks about my philosophy around collecting money, and it talks about the importance of setting a goal, affirming it, believing you can get it done, building those relationships, and then eventually celebrating the fact that you collect. Because I do
Right.
collections for a living, I kind of learned over the years you need to do those things, and obviously building relationships are very important. So I just want to share that. But that's again, it's a free PDF. It's called Five Successful
Yeah.
Strategies to Collecting your
Right.
money.
We're going to take a second, say hello to Weston, Stephanie, Sharice, Toy, Jeremy, Karen Foster, Sugar Bear, Leroy, Mackenzie Jr. on here watching. Thank you guys for joining. Okay, so you talked about the 30, 60-day thing. And one of the other, hey, Reginald, one of the other
Hey.
thing that I also want people to understand is the difference between when you are a private business and you are collecting
Mm-hmm.
versus the government, and starting with the private, because not every business has like the 15, the 30, the 90-day
Mm-hmm.
payment schedule. And why is it such a difference in the way that people understand when they need to pay for something? And then we'll go into when they don't pay, what happens when a business has
Sure.
to get someone like yourself to
Okay.
collect the monies for your business. So let's kind of get that part of the understanding between the difference between the government
Okay.
and the private in terms of collecting.
Well, in the private sector, basically the terms are usually set in the contract. It's usually net 30, which means basically your contract is written, and then the expectation is that you're going to provide your good and service within a particular time frame, excuse me, and then you're going to be paid normally 30 days after. On the government side, it tends to be it can also be 30 days, but normally it's usually 60 days and out, because the government cycle is they have two things. They've got what's called a Prompt Pay Act, and they usually can pay you within 30 days, but a lot of times it ends up being 60 days or 90 days, only because number one, it's the monies are cycled through on a fiscal year, and so that the monies are awarded basically October 1st through September 30th, and so the monies have to be approved from Congress. Then it's got to be allocated, and then it's got to be put on the contract, and it's a whole lot more complicated than I can explain right here. But the basic thing is that you want to understand that on the private side, you're basically your contract is written for net 30, which means basically you're getting paid within 30 days. On the government side, again, some of this has to do with how the contracts are written. If it's done, prompt pay, that means basically your invoices are submitted, and if there are no complications, you should be getting paid in 30 to 60 days. But on both sides, whether it's private side or government contractor side or government agency side, there are complications. So, for example, data entry errors are things that happen on either side. An invoice is not properly noted. It's missing a contract number. It's missing the date. It's missing the period of performance. It's missing the amount. It's missing who they're supposed to mail the check to. All the things I've seen over my 20 plus years of doing this is that it's been one thing over another. My tagline basically says we fix the financial disconnects, meaning I spent a lot of time trying to untangle what happened, so why people didn't get paid. So maybe I should talk of it from that sense. That's more of my expertise. So when companies reach out to me or reach out to people I've worked with, they just say, I haven't gotten paid for a variety of reasons. And first thing I ask them is, okay, what's your contract number? How much money is owed? What's the length of time you haven't been paid? And then what have you done? And most of the time they'll tell me, oh, I got this contract. It's worth this amount of money. I've submitted my invoices and I'm stuck. And they're stuck because number one, and like I said, I talk more from the government side because that's been more of my expertise, but I can hopefully people who are listening catch it from the commercial side or the private sector side, because it's still the same thing. You're still dealing with people. So let me make sure you're clear. You're still dealing with people, number one. That's why I was talking earlier about the importance of building relationships. I think if I want most people to understand this, every time you're dealing with another company, so if it's your company that submits the invoice to the other company, you're dealing with people. You're building a relationship. One of my philosophies really is you have to make sure you're courteous. I happen to believe that saying thank you is very important. One of the reasons I think I know I've been successful is I strive to be courteous, number one. I'm firm when I have to be, but I also realize there's a person, they're doing their job just like I'm doing my job. I mean, I'm the vendor and I'm submitting my invoice to them. I look for them to process my invoice properly, get all the sign offs and checks, and balances and get it into the queue to get paid. If something happens that doesn't get paid, then it's my job after say 30 days to follow up with them and ask the accounts payable person, hey, I'm Dee from BCS Solutions or whatever the company is. I'm looking to find out what happened to my invoice. 9 times out of 10, it's usually a data entry error or something got missed. But if you don't take the initiative as a business owner to keep track of the state of your flocks, you're assuming that because you sent it in, it's getting paid. Well, you need to make sure. That's why I said earlier in my example about setting up your accounts. Having a ledger. A ledger, for the sake of term, is basically having your Excel spreadsheet, the list of your accounts, your invoices. So you should know what's coming in. Let's say today's September, what is it today? September 17th. So in 30 days, you should know these invoices from these contracts are coming in. And then if they should be coming in. And if so in 31 days, if you haven't seen a check or an electronic payment, if I was me, I would be like, hey, how you doing? I just want to follow up to find out what's going on. Because ideally, what you don't want it to do is it go from 0 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 to 90 and beyond. Because the longer those invoices don't get paid, that means that there are more disconnects, more problems that have to be untangled. That's been my expertise, because that's what I've dealt in. I've mainly dealt with the over 60, over 90, or over 120 days past due, because that's the stuff most people don't want to deal with. Because you think about it, if you can get your money in 30 days, you don't need me, you're good. If your money is hung up after 60 days, then you'd be like, hey, can we have a conversation? And like, yes, let's talk. Let's what's up.
That I want to talk about next, though, and it actually goes right back to my video that I did last month about contracts.
Yes.
Business owners do not understand how important it is to have a contract in place for things like that, because you go to the legal side of it. When you can't collect your money and you have to go to court, they will ask you, is there a contract in place? You can't do your job if there's nothing in the contract that talks about when the money is due, what happens if the money is not paid, or any of that. So it is really important, if you are doing any kind of service, not only just for the fact of collecting money, but just for other stuff too, like business insurance also requires you to deal with contracts. And if you are a minority business specifically, there's a lot of things that go on that ask you about doing contracts for your service, because it protects your business. And that's just really important for you to be able to collect the money. Now, have there ever been a time where you just could not collect the money no matter what you did? They were just out there, they just refused to pay. What was the worst case scenario for that business when they just did not want to pay?
Well, I've had it on both sides. I've had it on the government side when I haven't been able to collect money back from the federal government for a variety of reasons. I've also had it when I haven't been able to collect from the private sector side. Usually, there's a couple things. One, the company's gone out of business. So, if you're a business owner, you should know. I believe you should know. The name of all your vendors. You should know their DUNS number. You ought to know their location, and you should know, like, who's the person that you've been dealing with. Like, it's either your salesperson, your accounts payable, accounts receivable, your contracts person, whoever. But you should have all those facts. Number one. Number two, as in anything, the goal obviously is to collect the money. But yes, have I not been able to collect? Absolutely. I mean, it's been where I've had to try to I've been assigned some accounts. This is years ago, but I've been assigned some accounts. I go to look for them. Like back in the day, we didn't have Google. So we did it old school. You had to go look up the company online. You had to go try to find their DUNS number. You had to try to see if they were still registered to do business in whatever state it was. And then basically you could confirm that you would get a letter or an email that would say they'd gone out of business. And so once I've confirmed that they were out of business, that means I wasn't able to collect. And then you have to submit that information to, like the CFO to say, we're not getting this money because this company, has filed bankruptcy. They've gone out of business, and unfortunately, we have to write that off. What I strive to do is to tell people, that's why I'm on this campaign about talking about how secure is your cash flow and your receivables, is that if you're starting to recognize that you're in trouble, first of all, if you're a business owner that has overdue accounts, number one, you should be talking to your financial person. You should be having a conversation with your CFO, if you have a CFO, or your accounts receivable person. You guys should be having a relationship. They should be able to tell you, listen, I'm looking at these accounts, and I'm really concerned that we're not going to get this money. And then part of that has to do with relationships. Okay, what are you doing as the CEO, the CFO, the accounts receivable, accounts payable person? What are you doing the salesperson? What are you doing to help nurture that relationship so that you actually can get paid? That's why, but that's been the theme of my thing, has been talking about the relationships that need to be built, recognizing when things are, getting past the 60 days, because normally past 60 days, there's a problem. Something has gone wrong. So I have not always been successful. That's very true. But for the most part, I have been. And then on the government side, when I've tried to work, what I do, what's called contract closeouts, I've had to try to retrieve money back from a vendor. Let's say, for example, if the government agency awarded a contract for, say, $10,000, the services were provided for $8,000 and there's $2,000 left. My goal is basically to make sure that they received all their money, they were billed and paid for what they provided, and then if there's money left over, my goal is to strive and get that. I've had situations where vendors have just out and out, flat out refused to respond to me. They've ignored my emails. They won't take my phone calls. Sometimes they just don't want to. And I've learned over time, when they get there, that means that that's a sign they're having financial issues and they don't want to own up to that fact. So, because when the government comes back to ask you, we gave you $10,000, you billed it, we billed and paid you billed us, we paid you $8,000. Our books show that there's $2,000 left. We're looking for our money. And if you come back with well, I'm not sure, you start to dance. In the government's mind, it raises up a bunch of questions, and they want to know, like, so what's going on with the money? No different than if y'all have kids. If you gave your kid $10 and you know the candy bar costs $3, you looking for your $7. You're like, well, Mom, guess what? I know you told me to bring back my change. I ain't got it. I spent it on a bunch of stuff, and I'm sorry. No, it don't work like that.
Okay.
Sorry, y'all.
I want to say hello to Reginald, Diana, Lisa, Maddie, and Julie.
Yes. Hey, y'all. Thanks, y'all. All my folks. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Hope y'all are getting something out of this.
Well, here's I guess now that we done covered the majority of the collections, the differences in the collection type, one of the last questions I want to ask you, Dee, is when is this time to have someone like yourself on the record of helping with collections, whether they're having trouble or not, but when should they just say, hey, I need someone that can help with collections before I get into trouble?
I personally believe you ought to be looking. First of all, go internal first before you come to me. I believe, if you're a small company that has, let's say, an accounts payable person, an accounts receivable person, a salesperson, contracts person, you ought to be working internally first. It should be. I personally believe it's always in-house first before you come to someone like myself, because if you come to me, that means you have to pay me. Pay me. Let's say you have $100,000 that's outstanding. I'm gonna collect successfully. I'm gonna collect most of that money, and then you have to pay me a fee on top of what I've collected. So I would prefer you talk internally first. But if you're looking at a bunch of accounts and they're over 60 days, especially if they're over 90 days, then yeah, I would say, you need to reach out to someone like me to say, listen, can you come in and let's have a conversation? Because my way of doing this is this. Before I would even take on the account, I want to hear your story. I want to find out what happened. I want to know, tell me about the kind of accounts you had. Tell me about what you've done to attempt to collect the money. Tell me where the disconnects are, meaning where are the challenges, what are the problems. And if you've just done the regular dialing for dollars, that's not collections. Collections is customer service. You have to go in and figure out where the disconnects are and respond to the vendors. Most times when they tell you they haven't paid your invoice, they'll usually tell you, we haven't paid your invoice for the following reasons. And when they tell you that, that's one of the things that what makes me different. I strive to respond. If they tell me they're missing something, I get it to them. I go the extra mile. I think what people forget is that you're dealing with another person. You're still, at the end of the day, you're still dealing with another person. And if they're missing things, most of the times it's a quick fix. But when it's gone, now I understand there's always exceptions to every rule. I'm just making this kind of general so people understand, like, well, you said this. I'm like, no, please understand, this is generally speaking. I'm also talking from my personal and professional experience. I also want to make sure everybody's clear. But if I feel like there's an issue if it's over 60 days, over 90 days in particular, that's a problem, because number one, what are you doing as a CEO of your company if you're not tracking your accounts, not knowing that money is still owed? There's no reason why, especially if you're a small company, there's no reason it should be that owed unless you're just not paying attention to the state of your flocks. That's part of the problem. And I think that's one of the things people forget. So if someone wanted to say, hey, Dee, can we talk? Absolutely. You can schedule a 30-minute conversation with me. We can talk about the state of your accounts. We can talk about, what have you done? What measures are you open to? Do you still want to work? And it also depends on the type of relationship. Are you willing to release those accounts to be outsourced, meaning for someone like myself to come in and work on them? Or do you want me to work with your team and help them figure out how to collect better?
That'd be awesome. Yeah, because I was going to ask you this last question before we
Sure.
wrap up is what type of training and workshops do you offer just in general to small businesses or government agencies in terms of how to collect?
Okay. I don't, well, so actually I have something called How Secure is Your Cash Flow? And it's a PowerPoint presentation. Actually, if I can do a quick plug, actually this Thursday, on Thursday and Friday through the Success Women's Conference, I'll actually be presenting my work digitally. It's called How Secure is Your Cash Flow? And it's 4 steps. It talks about the importance of having your contract information, your invoice information, the amount that's owed to you, and then the relationships. It talks about customer service. So one of the things I probably provide 3 things. I can provide in-house collections if necessary. I can provide training to the people who actually collect on the ground, and I also can do some consulting to talk to like the collections manager to figure out where are the disconnects. Because what people forget is that collections, most people think, they kind of put it as a low ticket item, but actually if you're not collecting your money, you're not going to stay in business long. I mean, I don't care what
That's
you do. That's
true.
just that's the heart of it. And so my campaign has been about how secure is your cash flow. It's to talk about, hey, listen, pay attention to your accounts. Pay attention to if you're a medium-sized company or a large company or not. When the collectors start talking about saying, we're having problems with this account, that's a flag. It's kind of like if your kid comes back home and they go, Mommy, this kid keeps bugging me. You got like first time, oh, he did just whatever. The second or third time that kid comes in, Mom, you're like, look here, you something rise up and you're like, look here, I'm gonna have to go handle this because
Right.
you don't want nobody messing with your kid. Well, it's kind of the same thing. I hope this example makes sense, but it's kind of the same thing. If you notice your accounts are starting to have problems, if your collectors are coming to you saying, listen, this issue continues to happen with this customer. Every time I submit the invoice, they lose it. They can't find it. It gets deleted, something. That's a problem. That means that the collector is bringing it to your attention. You as the collector, as the collections manager or the CEO or CFO, you should be going, oh, okay, I need to
Yeah.
help you figure out the disconnect, help you figure out how do we work
Right.
this. Because sometimes it's not at the base level, sometimes it's higher up. And those relationships, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, those relationships are very important. And what people fail to understand, again, like I've said, collections, accounts payable, accounts receivable, it's all about relationships. It's all about how do respecting that person who's actually going to pay you. Because here's the thing: if you're rude or absolutely just out of character with that person who's paying you, why would they make sure your invoice gets paid? I know I wouldn't be like, oh really? No, that's not a good look. I'm just like, no, it's not a good look.
So in the end, it's ultimately the organization's responsibility to make sure they're collecting their debts. And if they see something wrong, they need to investigate it. They need to do
Yeah,
everything they possibly can before they intervene and get someone like yourself involved.
absolutely.
Because then at that point, it might be just an easy fix. But if you don't have the resources to help with your accounts receivable, accounts payables, or any of your expenses, you
Hmm.
need to get some help or or find a process or a method in which you can track your expenses. And it's very hard when you're a small business and you're trying to do all this stuff out here. It's very hard to try to keep up with that stuff, but
It
you got
is.
to find some kind of method and some kind of process in
Right.
order to do that. And I mean, even myself, I have troubles trying to keep up with my own, so I know how difficult that can be. But
Right. And that's why. Yeah, and
think that
that's why I was.
everything
That's why I
far
was.
is just
Sorry.
important
Go
to
ahead.
understand differences of what's going on with your accounts payables.
Right. And that's why I was saying, I'm old school. I personally just believe, an Excel spreadsheet listed
Yep.
all of your accounts, invoice numbers, invoice date, amount, and when it's due. And then basically, it's just tracking that so you know what's going on. And if you notice that there's an account that you're like, every time I work with these guys, there's always a challenge. It's like,
Always a problem.
that's a relationship that probably needs some attention, which means, okay, figure out what I call the disconnects. What happened? A lot of my examples have to do with larger corporations that I've worked with over my career, where I've dealt with I've tried to collect millions. Actually, I have successfully collected. So I work, for example, one company I worked with is called Amherst Technology. They don't exist anymore, but what started this whole thing was this: they gave me $8 million to collect. I did $6 million in 60 days, part time.
Yeah. Right.
They still went out of business. They
Right.
still went out of business. Now, they had me and they had other collectors. My point is that I don't know what happened with all the other collectors. I don't know what happened at the CFO level and the CEO level. What I do know is that I went to work in August, and Halloween, I was out of a job. And so
Oh,
from that day, and even though I collected $6 million in 60 days, it's a true story. And if you Google them right now, Amherst Technologies, all you're going to find is their logo. They don't exist. They're gone.
right.
But what started this campaign about how secure is your cash flow is what happened there. The fact that from the CEO to the janitor, everybody lost their job. Everybody was out of work. And so my campaign has been to start talking about how secure is your cash flow, what's going on with your receivables, what are you doing to make sure you're staying on top of your money so don't end up like them. That's what.
Right. And guys, if you're watching the playback to this particular interview, please listen to what Dee is talking about here because it affects your business in every single way. If you can't collect, if you can't even sell, it's the same thing. If you can't sell, you will go out of business. If you can't
Absolutely.
collect, you will go out of business for sure. So Dee, thank you so much for this interview. Please give everybody your website, your contact information so they can get in contact with you. Or if you
Sure.
know someone, if you're watching the playback and you know someone who's in business and having issues collecting money, or any of that stuff, please make sure you reach out to Dee so that she can steer you in the right direction.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks to everybody who's on the live tonight. I definitely appreciate it. All shout outs to all my friends and your friends as well. So my company is called BCS Solutions, and the website is www.bcsconsultinggrp.com. That's www.bcsconsultinggrp.com. And again, there's a free PDF. It's called 5 Successful Strategies to Collecting Your Money. You just need your name and email address, and you can download it right there on the website. Hope that helps everybody.
Yeah, and thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stephanie. I think she's the last person to join that I could see, but I want to thank everybody who joined so far. And if you have any questions at all for Dee regarding anything that she said, please make sure that you put that in the chat window so she can answer all your questions. And I think Stephanie said, can you please put your website and email in the chat, Dee, so that they can copy that down. And,
Okay.
and also, please feel free to join the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast group. It's the Businessmen and Women of Color Masterminds. Now, it's Mastermind group because we have masters in our group, and our group is basically to help you understand about your business and everything you need to know about it, from income to sales to branding to marketing to whatever you would like to do. Please make sure you check in, and if you would like to do a Facebook Live with me, please get with me directly and we will get you on here and promote your business, because that's what it's all about. Thank you so much, Dee.
Hey, thank you, Anne. Appreciate you. Appreciate this. It's been great. I'll actually, once we finish, I'll make sure to go back in and type this in. I can't figure out how to do that at the moment, but I'll make sure it happens.
Absolutely. And so thank you guys, everybody, for joining, and please share this video with people who you know.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Take care. Cheers. Bye.
Alrighty.